further ado, Marjorie, we are honored to have you here. Thank you so much, and they are all yours.
Well, thanks, guys. So welcome. I'm really excited that you took the time. I'm honored that you took the time to be here today. So in that being said, anyone, like Jonas said, if you can turn on your camera, turn on your camera. Commit to learning for the next hour. I know we always try to say, well, I'm going to join this Zoom and I'm going to do this consult or write this contract or whatever. So the more that we can be fully engaged, the better. This is being recorded, so we'll make sure this can be shared with everyone. And there's some scripts and everything I'll go through. And so Jonas, so you know as well, I am a note taker. I plan everything. So anything I will happily share kind of the notes from this call with you, so you can share those as well. So people don't have to furiously try to take notes if there's not enough time. But the key here is anyone, and I think this is for both lenders and realtors, working and finalizing I think someone's on your buyer presentations. So that's the key, right? The key is if you haven't been doing that, we're going to do it. So let's see, there was a question. I'm hearing you say the sellers, buyers don't care about the lawsuit as much about saving them. No. They care about it. They're just not necessarily clear on it. So I think everyone cares who's paying attention. They just don't understand necessarily what it means and what has and hasn't happened. So we're going to get into that. But look, we've just started 2024. So as we're getting into this topic, I really also wanted to check in with a couple things that every year, I think this is the time that people are giving up on their New Year's resolutions. Are you sticking to them? Have you made commitments for this year that you already are thinking, oh, I haven't really committed to that? So before I get into everything, I just wanted to share a couple things with you guys. One, commit to reading a couple books for me. One of them is Amplify Your Influence by Renee Rodriguez. It is a fantastic book. It goes hand in hand with what we're talking about here, because really it's finalizing your communication skills, right? Really being able to convey your messaging, which is what we're talking about here. So this is a fantastic book. I've read it twice. I'm actually going to Amplify in February with him. Read this book. The second book is The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. For those of you whose day starts like kind of like a crazy roller coaster, right? Woo! You don't know what's happening. Let's get our day started with a plan. So if you guys can read those books and really start your day with a routine, I think this will be fantastic. So, okay, as we all know, right? Recent verdicts, but there's appeals now. So recent verdicts around the commission lawsuits, those are forcing us to really pay attention and analyze client communication and our processes. So if you haven't already, you will be questioned about these lawsuits. This will happen. The second book was The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Fantastic. So, okay, specifically, you're probably going to be asked about Sitzer Burnett, right? That's the one that was settled basically October 31st. So to summarize, and again, we're going to record this, but to summarize, the jury found that unilateral compensation offer, which in NAR, National Association of Realtors, calls it the clear cooperation policy, inhibited competition and fair trade. So just so you know, the clear cooperation policy stated a couple things. One, that listings had to be put in the MLS within 24 hours of a listing agreement, basically starting or agreement, and that all listings had to have an offer of compensation to the buyer's agent. That was a requirement. Now, they could have been as low as $1. So this offer of cooperation was never fixed. It could have been anything what everyone agreed with, but it could have been $1. But the fact that it was required was the point of contention. So as everyone is aware right now, it was NAR, Keller Williams, Remax, Anywhere, a few other companies, large conglomerates. So people ask, why were they sued? Well, they make up about 40% of the realtors in the country. So they were going after the larger companies. Okay. So they lost the case. There is an appeal happening right now. The verdict, obviously highly consequential. And if you've been paying attention, which hopefully have, there have been many copycat cases being brought forth by both buyers and sellers. So those were sellers. Now we have a lot of buyer suits, Pennsylvania, Florida, all these different states, right? The primary argument of the copycat cases is that for the buyers, that the buyer agents steer clients away from home listings that don't offer as much compensation to the buyer's agent, right? So this is what we're seeing. Now, right now, nothing is settled, meaning we don't have clear rules except that most associations, MLSs across the country, are allowing $0 compensation to buyer's agents. It used to be you have to have at least $1. Now, in many cases, it can be zero. Now, there are many things that could happen moving forward. It could be removed from the MLS. The DOJ is involved. There are many things happening. It is not settled. So nothing has been settled yet. No agreements that, at least in the state of Virginia, have yet been changed. Now, in your state, maybe it's different. Remember, we're all across the country. So at this point, you have to come to terms with this verdict at this time. And when asked about it, you have to convey a message properly to your clients, right? Like, you have to be more educated than they are, because nothing worse than they start asking you a bunch of questions, but they have a lot of wrong assumptions. They assume that it's completely done. They assume they don't have to pay anything. And by the way, in theory, they don't. They never did, right? So it is an agreement of commissions. So a script, for example, that I would use if I were you all, which again, this is being recorded, but this is something that we've all talked about here at our office. And basically, yes, there was a verdict in a recent case against the NAR, or the National Association of Realtors. The jury believed that NAR and several national brokerages and the MLSs conspired to maintain and inflate commissions through the NAR clear compensation rule, the one I told you about earlier. However, this is me saying this now, right? I've been working with buyers and sellers for 28 years. I have always been transparent about my fees and services. My fees are negotiable and always will be. So this is an opportunity for buyer agents to be paid commensurate with their experience and their competence, which is likely a positive outcome of this case. Okay. Now, this is where you can talk about your value, your experience, and what you do to help the clients. But I can tell you, I've had a lot of consultations already in even just the last 10 days, and we've talked specifically about fees. So this is not a class for on the seller side, the listing agent side, but I can tell you for my sellers, I explain to them, I charge X. This is my fee. This is not a fixed fee. When you work with me for this list of services, this is what you're going to pay me. I recommend you pay Y to a buyer's agent. I'm using X and Y instead of numbers because there's no fixed number. So I'm not going to go on a recording with a fixed number, but I recommend you pay Y to the buyer's agent. And this is why. Now, when you're working with your buyer clients, we're going to get into this next in terms of how payment works when we get into the compensation. And then we go through the consultation. But there are different options that will be moving forward, right? That I believe will happen, right? So if we enter times where the buyer agency compensation leaves the MLS entirely, which is very possible. It is very possible as the DOJ get involved that they are just going to remove that from the MLS entirely. There are going to be things that will happen. So one, the buyer could write in a seller credit, right? That the seller will credit X dollars to either the company, the buyer's company, or the buyer to pay commissions to buyer's agents. I believe that Fannie and Freddie are going to start changing rules to allow this to happen. Sorry, someone's computer has come on. There we go. If we can't make agreements, the problem is going to be payment, right? We're going to have to be talking about how we are going to be compensated outside of the MLS, right? Part of this, and it's very important when we are having these conversations, that we make it clear that it's very important that buyers work with a realtor that has local experience, extensive market knowledge, and strong negotiation skills. So that has not changed. We just need to do a better job conveying that than we have in the past. So I don't see, let me see. I see a question. Do I see a question? Hold on, sorry. Nope. Okay. Any questions about this? Any questions? And I'm curious, I'm hoping you guys are all having these conversations, but you all should be able to have about a 60-second talking point about the verdict is in. Here's what clear cooperation is. This is why the rules are changing. This is what I'm seeing. So that's going to be pretty key. The cases are not set, right? There has been nothing permanently done other than commissions being, not allowed, being optional in MLS. That's the only thing that's happened completely. So you guys need to be clear on that. Many, 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 many copycat cases. And what's going to happen next is, ultimately I would think NAR would settle, but I don't know. So that is kind of the biggest broad sense of the cases that I can give you. But when we talk about this, then we got to realize, okay, so we wanted to talk about the lawsuits, but we want to explain, and we're going to do a buyer consult. I'm going to mock out a buyer consult for you. But I think the biggest thing that buyers agents especially need to do that I don't think they had to do as much before is differentiate and define service. So I would tell you that I don't know a realtor that's a listing agent that has not, well, I do know, but has not had a crafted listing presentation, that there wasn't a set process and presentation that was done. But I know many buyers agents or people that work with buyers across the country that did not have set buyer presentations, that it was often, hey, they want to see 123 Main Street. I'm going to go show them 123 Main Street. You can't do that anymore, right? You must have this presentation before, because you had to have discussed compensation. We have several listings in our MLS, not many, but have come in with zero compensation. I can't just go show up to a listing and say, oh, by the way, let's talk about how you're going to pay me, right? That's just not how this can work. But I want you guys, if you leave with anything today, I want you to be clear on how are you doing at defining your unique value proposition, right? If I were to be able to talk to the 138 or however many people on here and you were a realtor and I said, why should I work with you? Right? What makes you different? If you're not able to succinctly and clearly be able to say, here's why me, not here's why you shouldn't work with this person. That's not the point. The point is, why should you work with me? So let's talk about some of these things that we need to have prepared when we're going to have these meetings. And lenders, I know we're talking a lot about realtors on here, but frankly, I'm going to be asking you the same thing, right? If I'm interviewing lenders, which of course you guys get rate shopped and everything else, but why should I work with you? You should be able to be really clear on that as well. So let's talk about it. I think that things that we have to really pay attention to that can differentiate you is things like, do you have a niche, right? Do you have a niche market? Do you work with a lot of military buyers? Do you work with a lot of luxury buyers, right? Do you have a niche? That could also be price point, or do you specialize or really dominate a price point? Is it your team, the services that your buyer team offers to that buyer, right? Is it your experience? So I've done this 28 years. I've sold, I don't know, 1,500 houses, right? That's something I do every single day. So I can get into my sales history. I can get into my services that I offer our buyer clients. Like, what do we do? And we have contract to close help, and we have a moving truck, and we're going to help them with a house cleaning. These are services that we offer them. Testimonials, right? So I think, what makes you different? So when you're doing that, you have to demonstrate it, and you have to demonstrate it fairly quickly, right? I don't want a PowerPoint about it because I'm a high D. I'm going to lose interest really quickly. So I don't need you to throw up on me how great you are and what makes you different, but I need some differentiating points, right? And so it could be years of experience, how many homes you've sold, a significant benefit of working with you. So a significant benefit of working with our team is my brother is a licensed home inspector. He will not be their home inspector, but he has very, very strong knowledge of homes in competitive situations. It makes it nice. If we can't get a home inspection, he won't be doing the full inspection, but he can evaluate the house, right? I grew up here, realtor for 28 years, do this every day. I'm a strong negotiator. I can help them construct offers that will beat other offers in a multiple offer situation. So what are your unique points? I think part of that needs to be your marketing plan, like in terms of how you're going to help them get into the house. Then it needs to be your communication style, right? So how often do they want to be communicated with? How are you going to do a great job communicating with them, right? So what other things, your negotiation strategies, what makes you different? So hold on, I have a question. Do you call the agents in advance to determine why they are doing zero commission when no verdict has been made? No, but I will tell you, I don't know what kind, I'm going to try to say this super nicely. I've been in many meetings, and what I'm hearing when I'm discussing these lawsuits, which I've been doing for probably 6 or 8 months right now, so I've been all over the place. I'm hearing a lot of realtors go, whatevs. I'm going to get, if I'm selling the house, I'm going to make sure I get paid. I'm not worried about what the buyer's agent gets paid. What are you talking about? So part of your job is to also explain the value of a buyer's agent. And I'm sorry if you've done this long enough and you are a strong listing agent, you know the benefit of having a great realtor on the other side versus not a great realtor on the other side in terms of getting something to closing. But if they're doing 0% commission, they caved. The seller said they wouldn't pay. They didn't explain it properly. And it's now the seller says my right. Now I don't believe in it, but I think that look, there's only so many reasons. Seller didn't agree to do it. I caved. I didn't explain the value of the buyer's agent properly. I mean, really, that's what you're going to see, right? So it's the same thing as when I go into listing appointments and someone says, everyone says they would do it for like $1,000. What is happening? We have to be able to stand up for our value and why we should be paid what we're paid and why we deserve the fee that we charge. That's something you guys have to be able to do. And I think a lot of people get into a situation where they're competing and someone says, tell me about your commission, or says, hey, will you do it for X? And someone's like, oh yeah. It's like, what? So to me, I'm sorry, the answer is one of the biggest things you want is my negotiation skills. And I am now going to just negotiate all my commission within 10 minutes of meeting you. Not so strong. So I think we all do things differently, but I think that we need to be able to stand up for whatever it is we charge to buyers if necessary and to our sellers. There's no doubt about it. So I want you guys to really spend some time on this. You should be able to have probably a one pager. You need to have some descriptive, something that you can hand your buyer when you're sitting in your appointment. We have it as part of iBuyer's Guide that we give as part of our presentation, but you have to, just like when you're competing for listings, right? You're able to say, my list to sell price ratio is this. I've sold this many homes. I dominate this price point. You show them and you say, you have, facts of why they should pick you. You have to do the same thing when you're working with buyers. If you haven't had to before, you will have to now. So I need you to really think about and put that together. Don't put it off, because I am already getting those. I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia, not a very big town, right? We're in Virginia. There's like 100,000 of us. Many of you in big areas, I would imagine you should be getting that more than I am. So you need to be prepared for that. So I want you to do that. Then I think you guys have to think about a buyer consultation. Now, I can't really have everyone raise their hand because I can't see you all, but when we query people, usually only about 30% of people were doing full buyer consults. So I'm hoping you are, and if you're not, you're gonna. So I want you to think about the structure and point of a buyer consult, just like you would think about the structure and putting together of a listing appointment. Hopefully you're doing that, right? So hopefully you have a super structured process. And look, lenders, same thing. I appreciate your business is a little different, but you're going to meet a client on Zoom or on person. You're going to have to reconfirm appointments. You have a structured appointment. You have to explain why they should pick you versus someone else. It's the same thing. So listen, I'm very checklist oriented and everything. I have my buyer folders. I have my buyer presentation. I have my buyer's checklists. You all need to have the same thing. So we're going to go through a buyer consultation, the steps before, during, and after. And I'm going to be brief on those. I'm not going to get too in depth, but I am happy to share notes because obviously you guys have to construct these as well. But this is proactive, right? So same thing, cadence, structure, like a listing presentation. So before the consultation, so someone calls me and says, I'd like to work with you, emails, whatever, text me and says, I need to buy a house. I'd like to interview you, or I'd like to work with you to buy a house. I'm immediately going to set an in-person or Zoom meeting. If they're local, they're going to come to my office every time. Yes, it happens. I've always done it. This has not changed for me. If they are not local, then it's going to be in Zoom. And I want it to be soon as it works for them. So you can do coffee shops, you can do other places. I personally like the office. It's very professional. They can meet my team as well. Zoom, I think, is way better than a phone call because at least there's a face-to-face connection. They're starting to get connected with us. So you're going to have a script for why you do it, right? So I'm so excited that you reached out to working with me to buy your home. The first step in the process, always with me, is to sit down for about 30, 45 minutes to do a buyer presentation to understand your goals, your wants and needs, discuss the buying process, and buyer agency, right? So if you can set a little time for this, I assure you it will save us many hours down the road, and it'll make sure that I'm fully prepared to help you in the best way. So right? So we're going to set up a time. So they're either going to come to the office or they're going to be on Zoom. Now, we always say that we want them to be pre-approved, the least pre-qualified, but pre-approved. I want you to talk to your lender before this meeting, because if you come to the meeting and you haven't been pre-approved, it's going to be very difficult for me to talk values with you, offer presentation, as well as set up your automated search, because I don't know yet your price point and what you choose to spend, what you can afford comfortably. So I'm going to get you in front of my lender that I recommend to you so that you can be pre-approved prior to this meeting. So I'm going to set that up for after that approval has happened. So next, and again, if you guys have questions, let me know. Next, you're going to send out a calendar invite and an email, right, to cement the meeting. I don't care if it's in person or it's on Zoom, but you are professionals, right? So you are going to send out a calendar invite as well as an email, right? Thank you very much for setting up this meeting with me. As a reminder, these are some of the things that we're going to go over, your wants and needs, the process, the real estate market, contract documents, etc., right? And we're going to go over any specific topics that you would like to discuss. Here's a quick recap. When is the meeting? Where is the meeting? Any directions they need? I think the meeting will last between 30 minutes and an hour, depending on your questions. I always say, here's my lender information attached, as well as a copy of our guide to buying a home. I have a guide. You can have anything you want that you want to attach to that. It could be your one pager, anything else. Look forward to meeting you. So you're setting them up for this meeting. Okay, so I just got a question. What is the pushback from buyers paying your commission? Okay, if it's okay, I'm gonna take that note. However, I have that in a little bit. So if it's okay with you, so John, I'm gonna hit it as we get into that part of the meeting, but there is definitely what we're gonna go over, kind of the structure of how we're going to work so that they don't have to pay us, but that's coming, I promise. So you've set up the meeting, right? Then you're going to have the consultation. So think about a consultation. If they're coming into the office, I want to have drinks here available for them. I don't mean alcohol, but Coke, Diet Coke, soda, coffee, tea, that they can be comfortable. If I can find out, if I can get an all about you from them before and we know snacks, then we want to have snacks available for them. But we want to sit down. So think about the structure of this meeting. So just so you know, yes, I am structured. I have a buyer meeting plan. And I'm going to go over that with you, but it's because as we get started, I don't want to skip things that I realize I should have talked about. So we're going to start, of course, with introductions. Now, you want to introduce yourself briefly. Like, you're not going to do a PowerPoint on your fabulousness and your wonderfulness, and you've sold more houses than anyone, and you're a cubic zirconia agent, and kiss, 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 love, love, love. That is not the point. 1 to 2 minutes, just enough to highlight some professional experience, a little bit of expertise, some of your personal life if you want to connect with them, especially if I know they have dogs. We're going to talk about my dogs, but we are not going to sit there and wax poetic about ourselves. They don't care about you at this time, right? They want to buy a house and they want to see if you're a good fit. So one brief introduction, right? I know we love ourselves, but brief. Then we want to acknowledge the referral source. So if Jonas came to me, right, from Grace, these are just 2 people I can say, I want to make sure I say, Jonas, I'm so excited that Grace referred you to me. Tell me, how do you know Grace, right? I want to give her some grace, but I really want to acknowledge that source. Plus, we love to get referrals, right? And if we take good care of clients, we're going to ask for referrals. So make sure you honor and acknowledge the referral source. How do you know them? That they took you, they loved. So Jonas loved working with us, right? Or whatever. So we know it's going to be a great experience. So acknowledge the referral source right away. Then I always start with, what questions? Can we have a copy of your meeting plan? Yes, you can. If you're very nice to me, I will give you copies of these. But start with ask questions. Let them interview you first. And the reason I say that is I am, again, a high D. I have the patience of nothing, right? Like, if I'm in the car, I'm like, get out of my way. So if I have burning questions that I want to ask, like, I don't necessarily want to sit through a long meeting that I'm ready for. But I want to have a couple questions, right? So maybe just like John was like, what's the commission and what are you going to charge me? Maybe that's going to be the first question. We need to get through that at the beginning, but let's go through questions that they might have. If they're interviewing realtors, I always say, hey, you're interviewing realtors, which makes complete sense. I get it. So let's talk about what questions you have for me before I get into my process. So let's say they don't really have any questions. Okay. So we're going to get into the meat of the presentation, right? Next for me is going through their wants and needs. Really, what are they doing? What are their goals? So they want to be in a house by when? What kind of house? So yes, there is a checklist for that, right? So we go through the whole checklist of everything they're looking for in a home. If they could have the perfect scenario, everything that home would have, however, what must it have? Oh, I need hardwood floors. Well, do you need hardwood floors or want hardwood floors? You probably need 2 bedrooms. You want hardwood floors. So we're really trying to get an understanding. And by the way, guys, this will save you a lot of time. So all the people that are like, they keep asking to see these houses that don't meet their criteria, we cement it right then and there. Right. So again, because I can see Grace. So what you're saying to me is if it has under 3 bedrooms, you don't want to see it. We're not going to go see it. Okay. Well, then when you call me and say there's this great house, I'm going to remind you. So unless something's changed and we amend your search, we're not going to go see that. So we're going to do a big wants and needs, price point, what it must have. Are they open to doing work, which for some people is one coat of paint and some people is gutting a home. We're getting a great understanding of their wants and needs. This is very important. And if you do it right, is absolutely the differentiator that is going to set you apart, because most people don't spend a lot of time on this. Their timeline, right? Do they have a house to sell? How do we have to put this all together? Do they have pets? Do they have kids? What necessities, how far from a certain, geographically do they need to be? So we need to do this wants and needs. What's motivating them to buy right now? What are they worried about buying right now, right? So we really want to get them talking. We want to connect with them. Once we're clear on that, we're going to get into the home buying process, right? And so that's explaining and educating the process to them. So there are timelines. I personally would go through a high level timeline at this time. This is what a timeline can look like, where you can just really touch on the timeline and the different parts. I wouldn't go super deep in all of them because they're already going to have like mass overload of information, but they need to understand pre-approval. They need to understand that this is our buyer consultation meeting where we're deciding if we're working together. They need to understand how a search works, how we're going to set them up on a search, what search looks like, what's their schedule to see homes, how does that work? What's the market doing right now? We have a lot of coming soon. They can't get into a house right away, right? So we need to explain what to expect. There can be days they can't get in when they want to get in. Sellers can be very difficult about showings. What about offers due on Monday? We have to go through all of that. I will get a little bit into the offer process and next steps, but frankly, I will gloss over those unless they have big questions, because I think there's just so much now entering their brain that they just think, okay, this is too much. Searching phase is next, right? So we got to help them with searching. So we're going to set them up on an automated property search or whatever it is that you guys do to get them prepared for that. So we explain again how we can set appointments. I set a text group with my buyers and my team, so we're all on a group so that they can answer questions. We talk about different parts of town. We talk about the market. We talk about older and newer homes, whatever may be important for them for the searching phase. So we're going to set them up for their property search. Again, we can talk about offers here. This is where they tend to have more questions. And actually, I think it's pretty important for you guys. We're searching, and then when we find a house, so you guys are all across the country, you need to explain to them what should they expect, right? So if we're in still a market where 8 offers are coming in, 5 of them are cash, they're waiving inspections, they're coming in 50,000 over asking, you need to make that clear now. This is the time that they know it's very competitive. These are the offers that I'm seeing coming in. So we have to be prepared to make offers like that. We also need to be prepared that if we are conventional putting down 10%, we're going to be writing some offers. We are going to get beaten, and there's nothing we can do if someone's cash 50,000 over, no inspection, closing any day they want, if we can't match that. So the more that we talk about what the offers look like, what we have to overcome, or that this is how we have to, if they can, we have to draft an offer this way for you to compete in this market. This is the typical negotiation we're seeing, by the way, none. So when they say how much under the price can we expect, no, that's not what to expect, but you're all in different areas. So this is the time. Do they have to waive inspections? Are there problems that we're discovering that we have to work through? How many offers might they have to write? Right? I think that the way I say it is, look, I've done this 28 years. I've never had a homeless client ever. You might have written 5 offers, but I will tell you the 5th house was the right house. And there's certain things we can't beat if we can't compete with them. So, and if someone says, I'd never do that, I would never pay over asking, I would never waive an inspection, I would never do these things, it might not be the right market for them. It's time for you to pick up on that now and talk through that now. They might need to wait, because I'm personally not going to write 15 offers because I'm just beating my head against the wall because they can't compete or will not with the offer structure that we're seeing coming in. So you guys have to make sure you explain that. And I will guarantee you, if you do a super strong wants and needs and you do a super strong, here's what offers look like, your process is going to be much, much less frustrating. So give them real life scenarios. Last week, I can say last weekend, I went to see a house. It went under contract on Tuesday. There were this many offers. This is what I expect was in those offers. It's not just theoretic. It's what's happening now. And you know, this isn't HGTV. They don't, you know, the magic realtor with their little briefcase. I just don't, has any of you seen a realtor with their briefcase? But anyway, they don't just show 3 houses and magically pick one and then the world just works together, right? That's not how the market works. Speaking of that, really touch on the market conditions. So I think people get it, but don't get the market conditions, right? So if you have highly data-driven clients, that would not be me. I'm more of a, let's go, I got what I need to get. If they are data-driven, economists, engineers, whatever it may be, then you're really, really going to drill into this. And if they're not, maybe you overview it. But they have to understand what you're seeing and hearing in the market, right? So what are they stepping into? So current market is challenging. I've been a realtor for 28 years. One of the most challenging markets for realtors in the last 3 years that I've ever seen. Doesn't mean we should be intimidated. It absolutely means we have to be prepared. So from my perspective, there are 3 main factors of the current market. The first is historically low inventory. So one big reason for that is you think about these homeowners that locked into and purchased homes between 2 and 4%, right? So we call those golden handcuffs, that a lot of people are locked into these rates that they just don't want to give up if they don't have to. So that is why our inventory is so low. We have less than a 1-month supply of inventory here. 6 months is a balanced market. So that shows you just how off it is. Second, rates in the last 15 to 18 months or so have fluctuated so much, right? So you figure 2.5%-ish in 2021, almost 8% or 8% last fall. So they're starting to come down. They have come down. Predictions, I read actually today that they're expecting 6 rate drops in 2024. We just don't know when that will happen. So that rate volatility impacts our market as well and kind of makes it more difficult for the buyers. But even with all of that, buyer demand is super strong. So even though we have higher prices, and even though the rates have kind of done what they've done, many qualified buyers are still in the market. But if we looked at last year, so in 2023 in our area, more than a third of offers were cash offers. Actually, it was closer to 50% with no contingencies. So since we have so many cash buyers, it's really impacting all price points, right? Fixer-uppers, anything, and the luxury market. So that is the reason it's gotten so much harder to get into a home right now. But I'm not here to intimidate you, right? Sellers are selling, buyers are buying home, but we're going to figure out how we need to compete, and we might need to make relatively quick decisions, but I'm here with you the entire way. So when you find the one, we're going to get it for you, right? That's what you have to be able to say. That is what you say to a buyer, right? You've got to give them confidence that although these are all very real, they're going to get a house and they're going to get a house with you. So I need to make sure that people are seeing that. So where do we find the information? How many were cash buyers? You can look in your price point. So whatever town or market you're in, if you do an MLS search of solds and you can do it in a certain price point, our MLS at least will show us conventional fixed cash, whatever it may be. And that's how we can get that data. So that's where you'll want to look and see how much were cash buyers in that case. Your area will all be different, but when I give you stats, obviously use them properly in your areas. But so next you're going to get into forms. Now we're getting close to the buyer agency agreement. Now notice I didn't start with the buyer agency agreement. Why do you think that is? So when we're asking someone to sign a contract, right? Hey, you need to fill out a buyer agency agreement, right? And they're like, whoa, They don't know us. We've given them no information, no background. We haven't found out what they want. We're just really saying, sign this document, right? No. So we're, yes, lead with value. So now we're going to get into some forums and we're going to explain to them again on the process. This is the contract. We're not going to go through all this right now. It's overwhelming, but we want to explain to them on the contract, the main parts, right? The price, any contingencies, what's an earnest money deposit they should expect, closing timelines that they should be aware of, which can depend mostly on the seller. Financing contingencies, how can we make those as friendly? Do we have to give up the appraisal, right? And then disclosure forms. So those are the basics we're going to cover, very broad based at that time. Now, if they're looking at new homes, I'm going to talk to them more about the new construction contract and the different inspections and different timelines for new construction. If they're looking in an HOA, a homeowners association, I'm going to make sure they understand the HOA contingency and what that means to them and the rules that we're going to find out about and things that we want to make sure that they can do if they live in that neighborhood. So we're going to want to make sure we give them all this data, right, as part of the contract, but I'm not going to read every single paragraph because it's a little too early for that, right? So now here comes agency. So this is where we've got to transition into the buyer agency agreement. So when you guys create your talk for buyer agency and the agreements, one, it's going to have to be with rules in your town, state. Two, it's going to have to fit your personality. I have my personality. It may not be yours at all. So you wouldn't just say things the way I say them, but you have to craft a message, right? So depending how much you got into buyer agency and the history and the lawsuits at the beginning, you may need to use what I talked about when we first started talking, the explanation of the broad-based explanation of the suits. Now, when we start talking about it, a lot of what people are confused about and what the sellers were mad about was, why do the sellers pay the commission? It makes no sense why the sellers pay. Well, you all also need to, and I can give you a history on it. I won't do it now, but I can give you a history and you need to figure it out in your state, the evolution of sub-agency to buyer agency, right? There used to not be buyer agents up until the 90s in Virginia. Everyone was a sub-agent, represented the seller. We started into buyer agency. As we split that, that's the commission structure, right? So that's where it came from. So it's important that they understand that. It's important that they understand very clearly the role of the listing agent. The listing agent represents the seller, right? So yes, they could go to the listing agent. Our company doesn't do dual agency. By the way, I think that's the next thing that's to go. I think if the DOJ has its way, there will be no more dual agency after commission is removed from the MLS. So you want to be prepared for that. But you need to make sure, as a buyer agent, what can I do that a listing agent cannot do? I determine price and value. I can help structure an offer, including contingencies, negotiation off price, which the listing agent can do. And I'm going to handle all the details from contract to close, right? And this is when I would absolutely, if I were you, figure out stories are very important, as you'll learn if you read Renee's book, challenging transactions you've had and why it benefited them working with me, right? So this happened, this fell apart, the septic was bad. What was it? And what would have happened had they not had representation? So as you get into that, you have to talk about the buyer agency agreement, right? So you're going to say, you know, I really hope I've done a great job explaining the process of buying a home. It's a complicated process. It takes a lot of knowledge, takes a lot of coordination and hard work to make sure we get to closing. So I've heard what your needs are. I know I can help you find a home, but as you know, that takes work. And, you know, we have really figured it out. It takes generally between about 50 and 150 hours in most cases from our first meeting through closing with all of the steps: coordination, showings, research, negotiation, contract to close, inspections, all of those things. And I want to stress, I have 28 years of experience helping clients buy home. I've helped well over 800 buyers in this market, as well as in my 28 years purchase a home. I'm here to respond when you need to, communicate you. That is my commitment to you. In the way that I work, I do require my clients, and actually so does our state, to sign an exclusive buyer agency agreement, right? This means you're exclusively working with us. I'm exclusively working with you. Now, at that point, you would go through some of the terms of the agreement. Now, As you can see, we do now this is me. So let's be clear as I get into this, I'm not going to give a dollar amount, by the way. We do 6-month agreements. Now, if they're looking for something impossible, we might do longer. You will see, as you can see me saying that this is a 6-month agreement. This is the commitment from me to you. For all the work that I do, my fee is X. Okay, so I'm saying X very purposefully because there's many people on this call in many different states, and you do not fix commissions. My fee is X. Please know I don't get paid unless you close on a home. And most of the time, and it is not uncommon for sellers to pay this fee. However, that fee can vary, right? So it could be less. In some cases, it can be less than the fee that I have charged you. Either way, I'm going to keep you informed on this, and you and I are going to talk about ways that I will structure an offer so that the commission is paid, such as the seller paying for it as part of the contract we write. So I want you guys to be clear that, that is kind of the conversation. And then we have them sign the agreement, right? So I then say, if there are no questions or anything else we need to go over, I want to go over and see, let's talk about the buyer agency agreement and some, questions you might have about it. And then we have them sign it. So you guys have got to, if it hasn't been part of your process, have these clients sign these agreements. Now, there are times that, let's say they come in or you were supposed to meet them and it was just, hey, we're just doing one showing. We don't know if we're going to buy. We just really want to see this house. Then do a one-time showing agreement if they won't commit to 6 months. But you have to have these conversations because you're going to show up at a house and you're going to pull something in MLS. Sure, I'll meet you at this house. You pull it up and it's $5. Again, I'm just being very cautious with my numbers. Well, it's much more awkward to show up at a house and then say, oh, we're going to have to structure this payment. So you guys have to make sure. And again, I think so. Oh, yeah. Oh, buy it and value are huge, not to be a commodity. You should know and show your value. Love this, Marjorie. Thank you, boo. And so many people are scared to, yes, confirm that they've been hired as an agent. So you guys have to, you have value, right? So let's all talk about it. I think if you are not sitting here right now saying, honestly, if that buyer doesn't choose to work with me, they're dumb. Like there's something wrong with them. They're missing something. I am the best choice for them. Now, not in an ego way, but in a true belief that I will take better care of them than anyone else will, right? So yes, the script, So Jonas, I don't know if putting in the chat makes sense because it's long, but I'm going to give my notes from this talk to Jonas and make sure it goes out to everyone so that you can all kind of, and again, don't just steal it, right? Make it you. So the Marjorie speech is going to be different than the Wendy speech, than the Lisa speech, right? Robin
Marjorie,
says,
if you email that to me, that's something Rebecca can get out to all the loan officers.
good, you'll all have it then. So hold on, let me see. Yes, that's the script. Let's see. Do you have a recommendation approach for a realtor with less or limited experience? Yeah, I think if I had less or limited experience, I would make sure I clarified how much time I had to help them and that I am there, like my communication, that it is all about them. They will have concierge level service because I have their, I probably meanly try to use it against me and be like, well, if she's working with 20 buyers, how much time does she have now? I might still come back and crush you very nicely because I love you, but that might be something you can try. But I think anyone that's new, any of you that are new, I think you use a lot more we. So you use we statistics. So if your company, let's say, is number one in your region, we sell more houses than anyone else. We sell a house every 5 days. That's not incorrect. It's just you have less you than we. But I think when you're new like that, you can get into different niches. You can say you have more time, right? So I think that's what I would do. And again, seasoned realtors that have a lot of clients, you got to make sure, hey, listen, I have a small team. And the reason I have that small team is that we're always going to be available when you want to see a home. If it's just me, so now I might be crushing the single person, sorry. But if it's just me, I may not have that availability. So look, they care about your communication. They care about your availability. They care about your negotiation. They care about your process and your structure. This is what they care about, and that you care about them. Right? Like every single buyer, I'm like, let's go. I have never stopped working with buyers. I do buyers and sellers. I love working with a buyer. There's nothing better than taking someone into home ownership. It's just, you guys as lenders know that too, that someone is able to purchase a home they never thought they could, or they've competed. It's this sense of like, wow, I did a great thing. So I've never stopped that. And I think that you have to really look, we're here to fight for them. We're here to get them into their home. We're here to take care of their family. I love it when they have kids. I love it when they have pets. Like, I love dogs, as I said. So it's like, how can I help them all? How do we really, really take care of them? And why us? Like, that's the key, right? Let's see. Yeah, rarely do clients ask about experience in the form of years. Yep. I think you navigate it with what each client needs and how you help them navigate that. Yes, it's true. Oh, look at you, Robin. You go, girl. How many of us ask experience with a doctor, hairdresser, dentist, lawyer? That's true. I have to say, you're like, oh, I hope you've cut hair before. But again, it's your time. It's your professionalism. I can assure you, a buyer calls 3 people and says, I'm thinking of buying a house. One person doesn't call them back. Let's be clear. One agent doesn't call back. One says, great. What are you looking for? Great. I'll set you up on an auto email. And then you say, I need to sit down with you. I need to make sure I understand everything you're looking for, that we get started, that I represent you the best way I can. We know how you want to be communicated with. And by the way, I want to make this fun. So we tell you that every time. This is going to be fun. It might be some stress, but we're going to have a really good time. Doesn't mean we're not taking seriously, but we are going to make this, and we're going to cover everything for them. They have nothing that they have to worry about doing that we're not going to take care of for them. These are the things you got to talk about, right? So as you wrap up, you're going to be, obviously, you've taken notes. So I always take a lot of notes. You're clear on outstanding questions you have to get answers to. You've got the buyer's agency agreement. You make sure you give them a copy of. I would have them leave with something. So we always have a little homework folder, whether you're a buyer or a seller. So depending on where they're looking, I know it's old school, but I love a map. People, I appreciate them 52, the old youngers who are like, there's Google. It's not the same. We leave them, we take the copy of their buyer agency agreement. We make sure we've gotten their all about you filled out. We've got a couple other pieces of information. We have a glossary for them. And then if they didn't get our guide to buying, they get this, and they get like a email after the meeting. So after we meet, they get a thank you note in person that we send out with like a thanks a latte card that has a little, have coffee on us. We can't wait to help you find a home. They get an email with a summary of the search we're setting them up on, right? So just to qualify, as we're setting you up on your search, you want the following criteria. This is everything. Once you confirm, I'll set up your search. And then obviously any relevant materials that they ask questions about. If they wanted to know about an HOA, if they wanted to know about anything like that, we're going to follow up with that information. And then you're going to follow up on your communication plan, right? Things are going to come on the market, make sure they saw it, and then your process starts. But I promise you, you kind of taking the lead on these conversations with your sellers as well. So I have sellers not asking. And as soon as we've sat down and I'm in my process, I say, what do you know about the lawsuits? And they either say, oh, and I'm like, no, not ooh, let's go through it. Let's demystify this process and why it's happening. And then with buyers, I mean, a lot of them haven't heard, or some have, and then we go through it and they're like, oh, that makes sense. You being the leader, you are the leader. You're supposed to take them through this. So you leading them through this makes it way easier to explain and explain what your value is. Do you guys have a list of services? Like I have a whole list of services. I think it's like 175 things. I think I got it from maybe NAR, but then I modified it because half the stuff on there, I was like, I don't even know what that is. But do you have a list of services of everything you do from beginning to end for your buyers and sellers? Are you able to articulate? Because they, what do sellers think? Well, you just put a sign in the yard. That's the funniest thing I've ever heard, by the way. Yes. All day long, I drive around with signs and I just put them in yards. That's all I do. And buyers will say things to you like, well, I found the house. Yay, you have the internet. That is not what I do. I'm not, you can find the house. Can you get to closing? Nah. So we have to be able to explain these things, right? So this is vital for you guys this year. So here's what I'm saying. Lenders, you have your realtors with you. Yay. I'm so proud of all of you. So you need to follow up with them. And honestly, if I'm a realtor lender partnership, I'm going to be saying, so if Jonas and I, or my Robin, and we are partners, I would want her to say to me, Marjorie, okay, so if I'm sitting with you as a buyer, tell me, so Marjorie, why should I choose to work with you? Like you've got to role play these things. You've got to say them confidently and you got to mean it like to your core. And that's when you know you're ready, right? So you guys help each other. Lenders, point out to your realtors, look, what I love about you is this. You always do this with your clients. I always tell our buyers this about you, and vice versa. And then also, by the way, lenders and realtors, how are we referring to each other, right? That's not a buyer consultation, but man with strengths, right? Let's see, be careful about the list. One of the things on there from NAR is, yes, fax copies of offers. You don't steal the NAR one. It also had a few things that I'm like, I've done this for 28 years, but I will tell you, it's a great place to start. If you do like NAR, I can't remember, 275 things that, you know, the buyer's agents do or seller's agents do, you can start to construct your list. But like right now with our buyer clients, here's another little extra for those of you that are still here. We have a list of services that we offer. So for example, I'm not, please don't go to your friends and say, Marjorie said buy a moving truck. I didn't say it, but we have a moving truck. I've had it for years. But we'll also we'll pay for like a pre-move-in cleaning, right? So for a buyer, house is a mess. We will pay for your house to be cleaned before you move in. We will pay for handyman services. Like, what can you guys tangibly offer to the buyers, also sellers, right? You can offer them a pre-move-in cleaning. You can offer pre-home inspection. What valuable services are you all offering to stand above your competition? So I think teaming up with your lender partners, your partners is a really good thing to do. Come up with new ideas. That's what I would recommend. Yes, that's what I got. That's what I have, Jonas.
Marjorie, thank you so much.